Welcome to the Justified Posteriors podcast, the podcast that updates its priors about the economics of AI and technology. I'm Seth Benzel, certifying my humanity with takes so implausible that no soft Macs could ever select them at Chapman University in sunny Southern California.
And I'm Andre Kratkin, collecting my friends in all sorts of digital media formats, coming to you from San Francisco, California. And today we're very excited to have Bo Cowgill with us. Bo is a friend of the show and a listener of the show, so it's a real treat to have him. He is an assistant professor at Columbia Business School and has done really important research on hiring, on prediction markets, and now on AI and the intersection of those topics. And he's also won some very cool prizes. I'll mention that he was on the list of the best 40 business school professors. So he's one of those professors that's really captivating for his students. So yeah, welcome, Bo.
Thank you so much. It's awesome to be here. Thanks so much for having me on the podcast.
What do you value about the podcast? That's something I've been trying to figure out, because I just do the podcast for me. I'm just having a lot of fun here with Andre. Anything I can do to get this guy's attention to talk about interesting stuff for 10 minutes. Why do you like the podcast? What can we do to make this an even better podcast for assistant professors at Columbia?
Well, I don't want to speak for all assistant professors at Columbia, but one thing it does well is aggregate papers about AI that are coming out from around the ecosystem and random places. I think it's hard for anybody to catch all of these, so you guys do a great job. I mean, I did learn about new papers, from the podcast sometimes. Another cool thing I think is there is some continuity across podcast episodes about like themes and I don't know, like arbitrage between different topics and across even different disciplines and domains. So I think this is another thing you don't get necessarily just kind of thumbing around papers yourself. But
very flattering.
Yeah, of course, yeah, it's a great podcast.
So now I'm going to ask you a follow-up question, which
Go
is
for it.
Obviously you're enjoying our communication to you. Obviously, like a podcast is kind of a one-dimensional kind of communication. Now we've got the interview going. We got this back and forth. How would you think about the experience of the podcast changing if a really, really, really good AI that had read all of my papers and all of Andre's papers went and did the same podcasts, same topics? What would you, how would that experience change for you? Would it have as much informative content? Would it have as much experiential value? Please, how do you think about that?
Sure. Well, first of all, I mean, I do enjoy your all's banter back and forth. And I do, so I don't know how well the podcast, an AI would do that. Maybe it would do a perfectly good, a perfectly good job at that. I do enjoy the fact that, this is personal to me, but we know a lot of the same people. And in addition to other guests and other paper references, I like, follow some of the inside jokes and whatnot. I don't know if that's all, all that big of a deal for the average person. But I have listened to at least the latest version of Notebook LLM and its ability to do a quote unquote deep dive podcast on anything. And at least recently, I've been pleased with those. I don't know if you've ever tried putting in like a bad paper in theirs, and then it's like it will of course just say, "Oh, this is the greatest paper. It's so interesting." And
right.
You can now.
So is that that's a little bit different,
That's
maybe
true.
slightly different than our approach.
Well, yeah, for sure. Although you can also tell Notebook LLM to like try to find problems and be a little bit more critical, and that I think works well too. So, yeah, I don't think we should try to replace you guys with robots just yet.
Good. We're very highly compensated, though.
I was going to say,
Andre, the opportunity cost of Andre's time, he could be climbing a mountain right now. I don't know. Andre, you take it up. Why are we doing this ourselves? Why isn't an LLM doing this communication for us?
Well, mostly it's because we have fun doing it. And so if the LLM was doing it, then we wouldn't be having the fun.
There you go.
Sure.
Well put, experiential value of the act itself. Now, Bo, I did not bring up this question randomly. The
Oh,
reason I raised this question of how does AI modify communication? Yeah, I used a softmax process, so
okay.
it's not random. The reason I'm asking this question about like how does AI change communication is because you have some recently accepted forthcoming work at Management Science trying to bring some theory and empirics to the question of how do LLMs change human communication, but now in the context of like resumes and job search and job pitches. Um, do you want to kind of briefly introduce the paper? Does AI cheapen talk, and tell us about your co-authors?
Yeah, most definitely. So the paper is called, does AI cheapen talk? It is with Natalia Langberg-Wright, also at Columbia Business School, and with Pablo Hernandez Lagos, who is a professor at Yeshiva University. Um, and what we're looking at in this paper is, the way people screen job candidates or screen entrepreneurs, or more abstractly, how they kind of screen generally. You could apply our model, I think, to lots of different things, but the core idea behind it is kind of goes back to these models from Spence in the 1970s, saying that costly signals are more valuable to try to separate types. And the example that
If I want to become a full member of the tribe, I have to go kill a lion. Why is it important for me to kill a lion? It's not important. The important is I do a hard thing.
Exactly. Yeah. So maybe part of the key to the Spence idea that appears in our paper too is that it's not just that the signal has to be costly; it has to be kind of differentially costly for different types of people. So, I don't know, maybe in your tribe, killing a lion is easy for tough guys like you, but for wimpier people or something, it's prohibitively high. And so this is like a test of your underlying cost parameter for killing lions or for being tough in general. So they go and do this. And I guess what you're alluding to, which appears in a lot of cases, is the actual value of killing the lion is kind of irrelevant. It was just a test. And maybe one of the more potentially depressing implications of that is the idea that what we send our students to do in 4-year degrees or even MBAs like ours is really just as valuable as killing a lion, which is to say, you're mainly revealing something about your own costs and your own type and your own skills, and the actual work doesn't generate all that much value.
Is education
Right.
training or screening?
Right. Yes. I mean, I do think a good amount of it these days is probably screening, and maybe that's especially true at the MBA level. But this idea of costly signaling.
Yeah, I would just say that, given the rate of A's for MBAs, I'm not sure that the screening is really happening. Maybe the screening is happening to get in.
Exactly. Well, this is supposedly, what the screening function is now. Is can you get in is the ultimate thing.
Right, and I think, as you already suggest, the way this works can flip if there's a change in opportunity costs, right? So maybe in the past, I'm the high type, I go to college. In the present, I'm the high type, I'm going to skip college, I'm going to be an entrepreneur, and now going to college is a low signal.
Yes. Exactly. So that's kind of what's going in on our model too. So how are we applying this to job screening and AI? Well, you apply for a job, you have a resume, possibly a cover letter, or, if you don't have an old-fashioned cover letter, you probably have a pitch to a recruiter or to your friend who works at the company. And there are kind of elements of costly signaling in those pitches. So some people could have really smart sounding pitches that use the right jargon and are kind of up to speed with regards to the latest developments in the industry or in the underlying technology or whatever. And then, those could actually be really useful signals, because the only sort of person who would be up to speed is the one who finds it easy to follow all this information. And
wait, can I pause you for a second?
Of course.
I mean, back before LLMs, when I was in high school, they helped me make a CV. Or a resume. It's not like there was ever any monitoring that people had to write their own cover letters.
That's really true. No, some people have said about our paper, and hopefully this will make sense, is that this is a more general model of signal dilution, which was happening before AI and the internet and everything. And so one example of this might be SATs tutoring or other forms of help for high school students, like, writing your resume for you, where if something comes along, and this is where GI is going to come in, but if anything comes along that makes it cheaper to produce signals that were once more, more expensive, at least for some groups, then that changes the informational content of the signal. So you can kind of
Right,
see,
if the tribe gets guns,
right? Yeah, then it just is too easy.
it's too easy to kill a
Too
lion.
easy to kill the lions, and but similar things I think have happened in the post-COVID era around the SATs is like maybe it's become too easy, or so the theory goes, to like get one where it doesn't really separate out who is actually a smart person. Maybe it's getting diluted with who can afford these kind of prep classes and things like that. But I don't want to stray too far from GI just yet.
For now.
So I think people have seen a lot about this, either on social media or in the mainstream media, is like, the signal in a job application seems like it may have gone down, because you used to be able to easily tell based on these pitches who is kind of qualified or not. And even without lying, you could write a much better pitch that would make you sound really more, a lot more knowledgeable, even without kind of misrepresenting what your underlying experience is. So it's really, I think, not just job applications. That is, of course, the setting that we study, that in entrepreneurship. But I think there are similar things about how grading at schools has gone bad. You used to be able to quickly tell from an assignment who knew the material and who's not. But now ChatGPT is going to really kind of interfere with that. Anyway, so with this as background, we then try to study theoretically and empirically what's going on with the use of ChatGPT in these sort of costly signaling settings.
Yeah, and so what? So I guess how do you go about doing this? Because it does seem like it would be pretty hard to study this in the wild. I mean, I know of a few papers, from some of our friends that have done this. But how did you approach this?
So the first thing we wanted to do was kind of motivate the question a little bit more theoretically. So probably at least the first half or so of the paper creates this model that has what I hope is a tractable punchline, which is that it's actually not inevitable that the generative AI would create this epistemic apocalypse.
Wait, a tractable punchline? Wasn't the punchline that anything goes? What's the punchline?
Well, I am glad. I am glad that we brought up the anything goes theory models, which is another kind of theme of your all's podcasts and critique of previous papers. So it is true that our model basically says that depending on a particular parameter, you could get either an epistemic apocalypse or a situation where the use of GAI actually improves the accuracy of screening, and it's like you get better information. You actually want your job candidates. You want to say, please use GAI. We'll know better if you would, don't send your pitch in without using GAI first. So it's true, anything goes. And my defense of that is we really focus the reader on this particular parameter that you could measure empirically in any given
Are there
setting.
other parameters that theoretically could affect this, though?
Not that we're talking about in this paper. No, I think this is kind of
all right.
I'm curious. Yeah, if you have some in mind, I'm curious. But
well, let's come back. So I have some thoughts at the end about interpreting the results. So we'll come back to that.
I guess I wanted to say kind of there's an approach in economics, the sufficient statistics approach, right? Where you write down a model where there's a particular parameter that kind of, depending on how big it is or on what side it is, that tells you something about, what is the right, what is the right policy, or which, what is the mechanism that quote unquote dominates a particular setting. And so I view kind of what you guys were doing very much in that vein.
Right,
Yes.
a ceteris paribus sort of analysis. Yeah.
That's true. So, what are we focusing on? What is the kind of the key linchpin of this model? It's a covariance. It's a covariance term across the population. So let me try to break this down. The two terms in the covariance are, first of all, how much human capital do you have? Or are you like a talented person who knows a lot about what you're doing? You have a lot of expertise or not? And we're sort of assuming that the employers are trying to screen for that. Why are they screening for it? Well, in an actual job, you could be in a situation where you don't have to use GAI, or you can't use it, and you have to just use whatever knowledge, whatever's between your ears. So this one term is your kind of level of talent for the job without AI assistance, and then the other term is how much of a boost does your cover letter get from using ChatGPT to sex it up and to make you sound like all the smartest, most contemporaneous jargon. So these two things could be they could have positive covariance, they could have negative covariance, they could have basically no covariance. But the intuition is if you have a positive covariance, then the most talented people are getting the largest bump from using generative AI. And the negative covariance would be if the really talented people don't really get that much of a kind of cover letter improvement, maybe because it's already so good that there's nowhere else to go. And that most of the benefit comes from improving the low types kind of quality of their cover letter. So this is the linchpin kind of parameter in the model, and what we try to take to data after this. But just to finish up what's going on in the theory, well, you get totally different screening results depending on kind of what is that parameter. In the case I think that people are most expecting, you have this negative covariance where most of the benefit comes from making low types and helping them masquerade as high types. And in this negative covariance world, there's not really that much benefit from too high types for using GAI because their cover letter or their application or whatever is just already going to be so good. So insofar as this is happening, we want to quantify that empirically. But there's also this possibility that, GAI puts the high types, it gives them superpowers and they can do even more amazing stuff. And that world,
Can I jump in here?
Yeah.
I don't think you have to interpret it as superpowers, right? If we're thinking about communication generally, you might imagine that high types have the higher opportunity costs of their time, right? And so there's some sense in which automating an hour of high type time is like more money of automating an hour of low type time. I guess to really understand how this plays out, I'd have to think about like how many discrete versions of this is the high type sending out to prospective employers, right?
I see. Right.
And
that's totally true.
And I guess maybe I'll add on to that. It depends on what we're screening for. And you'll get to this in your experiment, but like if the high type has verifiable high type traits, which is oftentimes the case, like assuming they're not lying on their resume, right? Then what does something like a cover letter reveal? It's some sort of effort, right? And so the question, like, so in my mind, cover letters are oftentimes screening for effort, which seems like, and
maybe
very,
yeah.
You take the time to customize a cover letter for this particular job, but
effort is cheaper for poor people.
Yeah, so it's kind of a little bit of a different interpretation than like skill per se, because skill, I think it's unlikely that cover letters, signify skill in many domains. Certainly in economics hiring, cover letters are essentially not read.
Essentially ignored.
Yeah.
I mean, unless they say, talk to my co-author blah, who, unless there's like, do this thing to learn about me information in it, right?
Yeah, interesting. I mean, there's like a number of things to follow up on there. I do think that there have been big things missed in the study of hiring generally, from trying to generalize from academic hiring to other things. I also separately just I'm not even sure I agree that cover letters are not read either in economics or at least in adjacent places like business and policy schools. And the fact that you think that is probably just a reflection of you guys going to such fine universities that you assume everyone would want to do it, would take the job. If you were, I know, I don't want to pick on anyone, University of
Wait, directional state.
yes, exactly. If you were from University of Southwest Kentucky, which is where I grew up, so I'll pick on it. It could be very worthwhile to signal, that you're actually interested.
Right,
Maybe
but
you have
again, and then
family.
perfect. But then we're not signaling skill. You're signaling match, or you're
Well,
signaling
in this
effort.
particular
Willingness to
setting, yes.
come. Yeah. So it's
Yeah.
the really question of really this correlation really depends on what is the signal that's being sent, I think.
Sure, that's true. But well, this particular conversation, I think, has gone off in the direction of cover letters, but candidates also use GAI to fill in, for example, the bullet points of, what they did in a particular job.
Sure,
And I think that's something where there's an enormous amount of, leeway for describing your job as a super high impact thing that required you to be this dynamic agentic leader or something like else. And this is a case, it's not cover letters, but is part of your pitch.
Yes.
Where it could actually signal different underlying skills. So there are lots of ways, I think, to apply these ideas in different settings. And, it's true that there's probably some, follow-on work that would be useful. And, we can talk about some follow-on work that other people are doing and that I and, my co-authors are thinking about doing too.
All right. Well, maybe.
Yeah, you don't solve it all in one paper.
Yeah.
How dare you not solve it in one paper?
Exactly. Yeah. So you could get these opposite sorts of things. Some people think, what are you talking about? How could there be positive covariance? That's ridiculous. There are a few. I mean, I have some examples in mind. In the paper, we talk about AI art. So I'm not an artist, and I don't think you guys are either. But if I used art with DALL-E, I think I'd be a little bit better. There's some evidence and some anecdotes and even some small studies that say, like, if you actually know how to describe art, as a trained artist would, then you can use these AI art generation programs to make way cooler art than you would, so like. If you were screening an artist, you would want them to use a generative AI, because then you would be able to see the big differences. And even just some screenshots from these demonstrations, I think, would show how much better the actually trained artists would be, or the high type would be, once they use generative AI. Now, another example of this to me is using AI for math. Now, maybe it's just gotten so good that it can just solve whatever. But I think if you gave a difficult economic theory theorem to prove to a total novice, as somebody who hasn't gone to a PhD, or a high school kid, or a middle schooler or something, that, like, they might not make very much progress. But if you gave someone who had who had trained or had some intuition for what the solution is, then I think it would be more powerful and actually, having the sort of result that you could do something with. But it's true, our model basically isn't anything goes, but it kind of focuses on this covariance parameter as the thing to pay attention to.
So I have another example of how it could be positive. So oftentimes,
great, I love it. Let's hear it.
If you're doing an interview process, there is like a take-home component. Like for a data science job, that might be a take-home analysis and a data set and a report, right? And in some sense, you can make it, the ceiling for this assignment is very, very high, right?
Yeah.
And someone who actually knows what they're doing might be able to do a much, much better job. Like there's a sense that the Gen AI tools might like raise the bottom of the distribution, but if you want to get close to the max, the people who are really know what they're doing might actually benefit a lot more from the tools.
That's true. That's true. Yeah. Well, something I think that your comments, Andre, made me think about is just even the idea of a max. And one reason I think that we've seen a lot of negative covariance applications is that the underlying test has been designed with a maximum that is there are too many people that are actually close to. And if the test had more sort of headroom to go, arbitrarily good, that might, even just that change alone might make it more possible that, GAI can actually help find the truly talented people as opposed to making the, people that those dog ate their homework kind of masquerade. But go ahead.
No, I was just going to jump in. I want to propose a hypothesis for why negative correlations might be common generally.
Right.
So you might imagine, in rather, not generally, in experimental settings, in experimentally relevant settings. Why do I say that? Imagine if there's your quality as a worker is both a function of the stuff that you can be automated by GAI and stuff that can't be automated by GAI, right? So I'm a worker, I have to do both of these tasks, but maybe I'm going to delegate some of the automatable by GAI tasks. If we're all applying for a job, which is kind of at the same sort of productivity threshold, and we're all kind of assortatively matching to we're applying, we're not applying to the corner bodega and we're not applying to Google. We're all applying for this mediocre firm. For us to have the appropriate skill total productivity for a mediocre firm, I have to kind of be good at one thing and bad at another. So these productivity isoquants of given workers will have to be imply a negative correlation between skill in the automatable thing and skill in the non-automatable thing. So it doesn't surprise me that if you get kind of a population which is pretty homogeneous in terms of total productivity, that's going to entail a negative correlation in the automatable versus non-automatable skill. So that's why I think this is going to be common.
Okay, interesting. Cool. I'm curious. I think one of the places where you see negative covariance the most seems to be in the classroom. I guess how does this isoquant idea apply there? Or is it just because it's education and not an actual job that it doesn't really apply?
Well, I mean, my thought process would be there's a lot of a sort of matching between programs and students, right? So
I see. Yeah. Okay. Perfect. Yeah.
But as I want to complete my idea, to complete my idea, actually, I've realized that I'm pointing in the wrong direction, right? For there to be for the AI to boost the overall lower total productivity person more, what it needs to, in terms of the job application, what it needs to do is boost them disproportionately at writing job applications, right? This is your notion of how correlated is your actual skill with your ability to write the resume with and without the GAI, right? And I think in the general population, it's probably the case that your ability overall and your ability with AI are positively correlated.
Okay.
In which case, this would be a noisy signal that would fuck you up. But if we had a narrow enough band of quality coming in, it would go in the other way. So maybe there needs to be a level of screening before the screening, but we haven't even let you get to the results yet.
Oh, good. No. I think it's great to, as part of the benefit of the podcast genre is some tangents here and there. So no, there are lots of, I think, interesting ways to go with this general topic and kind of open questions. So in the empirical part of our paper, we're just trying to measure how much actual information loss is there, and is it possible that for certain subgroups you actually get information gain, and also what is this covariance? Is it kind of more positive, or negative? And the key to understanding our experiment is that we actually know something about all the subjects in it, and what their kind of high versus low type is before they even enter the experiment. So I'll tell you a little bit more about the setting. We are looking at job seekers on Prolific who are in the market for either a data science job or a consulting type of job.
So, Bo, I'm just to clarify, because I do think this might be unclear to the participants. These people are not actually looking for a job. You are recruiting them into an incentivized survey of some sort, right?
That's true. That's true. They do have experience in these respective domains.
Sure.
And so, insofar as this is an incentivized experiment, we have, recruited subjects with kind of, domain appropriate knowledge, at least in some cases.
Can you explain do you look at their CVs, or this is something Prolific tells you that they're experts versus non-experts?
Yeah, Prolific screens them beforehand, and so they're a little bit unclear about how exactly they screen these people.
Paper is also unclear about what makes someone an expert.
Fair enough. It's mainly that.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I guess my interpretation is that no one in this paper is an expert. There would be no way any expert in data science would be on
for $12 an hour
in this sample. So it's
sure. Well, you sound like one of our referees.
I'm not.
Just to clarify,
just to be clear, I am definitely not your referee.
Okay. Yeah. I think the underlying theory doesn't require anyone be like elite at any of these things. There just has to be variation within the subject population about who has, relatively higher or lower human capital, and that this be revealed.
Can I pause you for a second there? Because one of the main outcomes is going to be whether people's predictions of whether someone is an expert move closer to 50-50 or not, right? But presumably, if the signal is getting less informative, you should move to the population average of experts versus non-experts, not 50-50.
Well, the experiment was set up such that that the population average was 50-50.
So you have a measure of whether these people count as experts, right? And in your sample, approximately 50% are experts and 50% are non-experts. Yeah. As a person reviewing these, have you told me that 50% are experts according to your classification?
Yes. Now, interestingly, their actual beliefs, they don't seem to totally believe that, because on average, they think about 45% are experts. And interestingly, they think that about 45% are experts both in the GAI and the non-GAI condition. So it's possible that they would have just totally updated their beliefs based on all these amazing cover letters and pitches and little resumes in the experiment, and said, "Oh, these people must all be really good." But the screen.
Well, what actually happened?
Yeah,
tell us the treatment.
So I think to be helpful to the listeners, I think the experimental the unit of randomization, the treatment.
Exactly. Yeah, totally. Yeah. So in our experiment, we recruit people with job experience in the various domains. And we ask them to make a pitch for both a job that they're qualified for based on what Prolific knows about them, and a job that they are not qualified for. So everyone either has domain or expertise or prior experience in some sort of data science or some sort of kind of management consulting type of job. So basically, everyone is asked to masquerade a little bit to be as qualified as possible for a job that they really didn't have any prior experience. And so they write these pitches, and then they're asked to use ChatGPT to edit them to try to make them essentially more convincing. So this is the sender side of the experiment. And then on the receiver side, we get basically people with hiring experience or recruiters to then evaluate these different ones and try to label who are the people that have actual expertise, and who are the ones who don't. It's essentially like asking, who would you want to hire? And the recruiters get to know who was using GAI or not. And so then they can
this seems to be a very important distinction here. So be very clear. They're told who uses it or who has access to it.
They're told who has access to it. And our goal there is we're trying to think about the long run implications of GAI on signal dilution. And I think we've arguably already reached a world where, if you read a cover letter or you read a resume, it's probability 1 that they had access to GAI. And
it's not just probability 1 hyphen, it's a major insight that you just got.
Right.
Certainly.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So the experiment I don't think is a good. It doesn't capture, say, the 2024 era very well. Like the
Yeah, remind us when is this happening? When are you doing this stuff?
It actually happens in 2023. And I think that there's an intermediate period where there's some uncertainty about whether this person had access or not. But I guess the long run implications between the pre-GAI world and the post-GAI world, these are the more kind of interesting ones, I think. To my co-authors and I.
Right. The correct treatment, yes. I totally agree that it makes sense that the treatment is these people got access to AI rather than, they used AI for exactly the sentence, because that's the more empirically relevant. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. It's also possible that the control group could have used GAI as well. And so we asked them just to make sure, but basically almost none of them did, and we removed the instances where.
So I had a constructive comment for you, which is that you could use.
Oh shit, this is going to be devastating.
No, it's actually constructive. You could just use one of these AI writing detectors, the good one from Alex Imos's paper, to see whether they actually use the Gen AI or not.
I see. Yeah, no, this is a good idea. Well, if it hadn't already been accepted, I think that would definitely be worth checking out. You
can use an agent to
that's a good point. Yeah.
Do this for you.
And one detail you eschewed is that people who use the generative AI, their CVs get way better according to generative AI.
That's true. Yeah. So when basically we have these recruiters assess, they assess several things. One is just like, do they think that the pitch is generally higher quality? Does it seem like it required more effort to produce? Or does it sound kind of polished and like the person knows what they're talking about? So of course,
what's the exact prompt? Wait, no, I actually am very curious. Which of those versions is what you ask?
It is what's the quality of the pitch is the
quality, right? Because it'd be very interesting if you got a different result with how much effort do you think you put in?
No, that's our theoretical interpretation. We asked them about it. Yeah,
fair enough.
And
why not ask?
That's true. Yeah, it is. I think it was important we didn't ask them how convincing it was, because that's actually a separate question, which opens up the idea that, like, yes, this is a higher quality pitch, but because we know it's now become suddenly super cheap to generate a pitch like this, we're actually not very convinced by it. So this is the other kind of main outcome variable. Who do you think is actually kind of an expert, or how convinced of you were this? And on average, we see information loss from the conditions where the candidate was able to access generative AI. And so this is about a 4 to 9% information loss, or a 4 to 9% decrease in accuracy.
Can I pause you for a second? Because so there's two measures we're going to use as how accurate are these screeners. The first one we talked about just now, which is how close are you to just 50-50 as to whether this person is an expert? So obviously you have zero information if you say that they're a 50-50 expert, but if you were 100% one way or zero, you'd be confident. And then the second thing you get at, right, is this error measure, which is the difference between whether the person's actually an expert or not, which is this 1-0 binary. And then people can kind of like kind of continuously say, I think this guy's an 80% expert. Or I think this guy's a 20% expert. And specifically when you say that information transmission went down, which of those measures are you talking about, or both?
Both. The 4 to 9% represents, one of them is using one of these outcomes, and the other one is using is using the other one. And so, yeah, I mean, basically, we're trying to say, you could use a variety of, either of these ways to measure, measure accuracy, and you qualitatively get the same thing. And so, what should you make of this 49%? So I think the information apocalypse people think like, wow, that's it. Only 4 to 9%. Like this is not very much. I think that's a fair point. Now, if you think about actually another detail that I've left out is we ran this experiment with essentially on hiring and with recruiters and hiring managers, and then we also did a similar one with in the domain of entrepreneurship with people that were interested in starting a new business, some of whom had no prior expertise in the type of business that they were pitching, and the evaluators here were people with some sort of investing experience. We broadly see the same thing and can't differentiate the two different domains with regards to the key kind of outcomes and the intermediate values. We should get back to this 4 to 9%. But one very interesting result, I think, is that when the receivers of these signals are evaluating its quality, we see this huge collapse in the variance of these signals. So it basically looks like everyone's pitch starts to look pretty good. Without GAI, they're all kind of spread out, which is useful for kind of disambiguating who has a good pitch and who has a bad pitch, and who has a kind of high underlying experience in human capital or not. But the GAI kind of homogenizes all of them, and this is the intuition behind why there's this information loss, is that on a quality dimension they all look the same.
So let me understand that a little bit better. So I understand that we're bringing up the bottom, right? The really bad art resumes and pitches get upgraded. Are we also dragging down the top, or are we just making it more linguistically similar? Or help me understand what's happening for the pre-GAI top performers.
So they're getting bumped just not by very much. So if all types were kind of moving up in quality by an equal amount, then you would just kind of shift the quality between, to the right, between the no GEI and the GAI treatments in the experiment. But what we see is that even the high types go up by a little bit, but just not by very much. With regards to their application quality or their pitch quality. Meanwhile, the low types are going up a lot, which then pushes them next to the high types, and they're now kind of looking very similar to each other with regards to the quality. So we could also look at linguistically, are they using the same underlying words? We didn't look directly at that, but I think it's kind of likely, given what we've seen in other domains, that use of GAI makes everybody kind of sound a little bit not just similar quality, but actually using some of the same underlying words.
Not just similar quality, hyphen, almost identical examples.
Right. M dashes and, using the word delve a lot and stuff like this. Yeah. So on average, you lose information. I think the 4 to 9%, there's not a lot of information in screening to begin with. It's like a very well replicated finding that it's hard to hire people, and it's hard to kind of pick diamonds in the rough before they have much of a track record. Even if they have a track record at other companies, the match specific aspect can be kind of hard to pick up on. And if you think about an investor who had 4 to 9% lower returns, and one of our applications is actually in investing, then I think that would be a problem for their success of their business.
So I'm now gonna make the point about like I don't care about whether this is a big or small effect because I don't care about your setting. Not you know
Oh,
not like it's a bad setting to like show how this would work in practice in a real setting we cared about, but like clearly prolific people rating each other is not really something where we specifically care about the parameters that we estimate. For example, for an investment pitch, no one actually makes investment decisions based on a written artifact, and that's that, right? Or you'd have to be
yeah, no,
crazy
but
to do that.
I will hard disagree on that, because
Spicy.
the most common place to get turned down from a startup pitch is before you even walk in the door, when you send your text only pitch um, to an investor or a angel investor or a VC. Text only, maybe some mostly text slides. You send that in. This is where most people are eliminated. They don't even get in the room. And so,
But I guess what Andre would say is the marginal guy who gets into the room is never going to get the deal.
Yeah. I mean, that's
I don't know. I don't know if I even agree with that. I think that VC investing is probably really noisy as well. I mean, they lose a ton of money, and not everyone agrees. I mean, there are these cases like Google where they had two top tier investors, but I think that there are cases where like I mean, people didn't necessarily expect it was a
I don't think
seemingly marginal person.
I really think if you wrote down plausible distributions here, it would be hard. It would be almost surely that this is really affecting people with very low probability of investment. Just to get right, because the baseline rate of investing is so low, even conditional, and getting past that initial stage, right?
Right. And even if we take a step back, if we think about just AI as a technology that is good at automating the low skill thing, but leaves the high skill thing, not less affected, you would expect that, the more advanced setting, the setting with more applications, if we're just taking the argmax, maybe it doesn't matter so much that we're mixing up the middle a little bit.
I see what you mean. Yeah, I see, I totally see what you mean. Yeah, interesting to kind of keep on studying this.
So yeah,
And the
context.
distributions
Okay, so
distributions might be different
Well,
across different domains too.
Yeah, I guess like that's what I was really pushing back on just this. Like I would not like I like the paper, I view it as a proof of concept, but I would not take anything literally. So I'm very uncomfortable with statements as like investors would lose this many returns and just in general, right? Like it's not, lab experiments are great, but they're not going to tell us.
Andre would only trust this study
Yeah.
if people reported 0% of these people are experts.
Right. Yeah, it absolutely is a proof of concept sort of paper, and kind of this is something we talk about in the kind of discussion. It's totally fair to say. I mean, I don't know how much.
I guess I was. Yeah, so I guess I was going to offer you the chance to say something about other papers because now there are a few other papers that are kind of trying to get at similar mechanisms. So
do the meta-analysis live for us.
I assume you've thought about it. Yes.
I have seen some other papers in this area, and they all look super cool. I guess the ones that I know best, although I don't know every detail of this, are by first of all a PhD student at Princeton, and then a couple of PhD students at Yale that are both studying a change on Freelancer.com that happened when they released generative AI, basically cover letter. Kind of a tool to help your pitch if you were a freelancer. And in various ways, I don't want to speak on behalf of those authors, but it seems like at least in those cases, there was kind of this negative covariance idea where it seems like it actually harmed what used to be good signals about your match quality. And the way that the freelancers would do that was they use the AI, use the generative AI tool to like customize their pitch to look exactly like the requisition, or as much as possible without lying. I don't think they established there was no lying, but this is how they were doing it. So at least that. So in these other domains, it seems like there's some evidence that that the generative AI is
Then
kind of similarly kind of messing up signal accuracy and signal quality.
and then there's also, I think, Emma Wiles has a paper, right? There's a
Oh,
couple
most
of
definitely.
papers, yeah, on this.
Most definitely.
And if I remember correctly, then one of them at least, they get access to the Gen AI tools, and that increases overall hire rates on the platform. Am I remembering that correctly, or?
That's right. That's right. And then, at least in that case, they don't find any sort of ex post regret, and so which might indicate that they were fooled and they were kind of unhappy. So this is a little bit more positive of a finding.
Will you go out there? Will you now say, and the reason that they found that GAI was good was because is this positive? They must have had a positive correlation between true skill and benefit from GAI. Do you want to make that claim
Well,
in that population, in that context?
right. Just to be more clear about what they find, and at least what I remember as them finding is they don't actually find that hiring improved. They just find a noisy enough covariate that they can't reject, that they can't sign it as negative or
Fail to
positive.
reject.
Right. So I not trying to start something here, but if
I gotta
recall,
start.
I thought like, well, maybe this is more of a kind of somewhat ambiguous finding. And I also think that it's presented not as hiring actually improved, but we cannot reject that hiring actually got worse. So then, maybe more precise tests will change this. Even
So to be clear, the quality of we're talking two things: the quality of the hires and the total number of hires, which are different numbers. And I think you're talking about the quality of the hires. Is that right?
That's right. I think that the paper by Emin and John have the, on this other freelancer platform, possibly the same one. We don't know. But after you've hired someone,
truly a mystery. Which platform?
Yeah. The employer can rate the freelancer, and so if I recall their paper correctly, I think that they're looking at those ratings and saying, and it's not like in the treatment group where you had these amazing cover letters. Everyone was disappointed ex post with what happened. There's a lot of other stuff that could go on there. It could be that they were super disappointed initially, and then the freelancer is like, "Oh, sorry. Well, I kind of masqueraded. Why don't I do some extra work for you and adjust some other margin." But it's the punchline of our theory model is that this I don't think is forced to go any single way, and I think it could totally be happening this way.
But yeah. So I guess maybe let's wrap up this idea of like external validity, right? Which is the model seems to really imply that this will be super population and context dependent.
That's true.
If the model implies that it's going to be super population and context dependent, then taking a snapshot in one place at one time can only tell you so much about everywhere else.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think we're trying to sell this as like this is going to happen everywhere, at least not on the basis of these results. Now, an interesting podcast discussion, I think, would be like, what do we expect? And, we can go into that more speculatively.